Oh, good morning, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor. We're back with another episode of Tea with Sue. I'm here with my trusty teacup, my favorite Earl Grey, and life is good. Well, this week I've been mulling over words. Now, if you've watched me before, you know that I talk a lot, first of all. That's just my nature. And secondly, I think a lot about words and phrases and sentences because I want to know, is there a deeper meaning to what I've just said or what's been going on or what someone else said? And often there is. So the sentence that I want to talk about this week, it's probably just a phrase, but anyway, the phrase is, I don't know. So somebody asks you a question, and lots of times the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. Well, many years ago when I was going through a personal growth workshop, we got called on this phrase because we were in an arena where growing personally was really important. So there were all kinds of things coming at us. And if we got called to attention, we're standing on our feet and surrounded by others who are watching everything we're doing and whatever we're listening to, whatever we're saying. And there was a lot of pressure. So the facilitator would ask a question, and invariably the answer was, well, I don't know. Well, what's really behind the I don't know? Is it that we genuinely don't know, meaning we don't have the answer, right at our fingertips? Or is it a way of sliding by what's really going on within us? So maybe it's, I made a list, maybe it's, I'm fearful. I'm fearful of saying what I know. Either it might be wrong, and we don't like to be wrong. It might displease somebody else. They might say, "Oh, how could you say that? Oh, I'm really hurt by what you just said." So it might cause that reaction. We might be fearful of making a commitment. Well, of course, all of those things tend to go right back to fear. So what is it that we're afraid to say? Well, I certainly know in my life that I've been afraid to say a lot of things over time. So it was easy for years to just say, well, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know anything about that. And just see if they'd let me off the hook. Then when I got confronted with this and saying, what's really going on? Is it that you don't want to say? Well, I don't want to say right now. I'm not willing to open up about that, or I'm not willing to explore that, or what is really going on about that. And so ever since I've been challenged, I don't let myself off the hook very often, because even if I have the I don't know right at my fingertips, there's a deeper little trigger that goes in behind that and says, well, Sue, let's explore that a little bit. What is it about that? What that question? And of course, the I don't know is a defense mechanism, right? And we want to just feel safe. We don't want to go where there might be dragons, right? And yet in exploring where that might take us and say, well, what if I do know? What if I just haven't found the answer yet? What if the answer is in a place that I hadn't thought to look? And that I really do know, maybe I'm just not ready to say. Maybe I'm just not ready to share. Maybe I have a fear that I need to overcome. Maybe the environment is not one where I can trust that what I say will be taken the way I'm meaning it. So there's all kinds of layers that come into that I think are worth exploring, because I know for me, I don't want to be fear bound. I don't want to be constantly monitoring what I'm saying for fear that it's going to negatively impact someone else, or they'll come back at me because they're mad or upset or disappointed or let down or whatever that is. Well, first of all, I'm not responsible for how other people take what I say, and you aren't either. You're not responsible for the feelings that get triggered in them and how they choose to respond. Now, my responsibility and your responsibility when you say something is to make sure that it comes out in such a way to not cause pain or hurt or tension or pressure or whatever. I mean, we do what we can to ease the situation as much as possible. That's our responsibility, that we're not intentionally saying things to hurt the other person or cause harm in any way. So we're responsible for that piece. I will do the best I can to share or say something in a way that causes the least likelihood of harm. That doesn't mean the other person isn't going to feel harmed. So, but that's not your responsibility. That's their responsibility to take that in and decide, oh, well, maybe it kind of hurt, but maybe there's a grain of truth there. Maybe I needed to hear that. And they weren't intentionally wanting to wound me. They were just wanting to express something. So, and the same thing when somebody asks a question such as, well, how do you feel about that? And if we're too concerned about what they might think about how we feel about that, we won't say, I'm okay, or I don't know, I don't know, and we brush it off. But maybe there's a deeper way that will serve both of us in the communication thing. And it's so interesting that the part that we tend to ignore in accessing answers. So let's face it, I like to Google lots of stuff. Somebody will ask me a question that I know I have no answer for. And I say, well, let's Google it. And so I'll Google it, and you can find out just about any darn thing you want to find out. But there's lots of stuff you can't find out about. And it's interesting that sometimes all of the information that's available to us is too much, because it doesn't get to the heart of the matter. It doesn't dig deep enough, because it can't. It's just information. It's just data. And so it's really important that we say, well, do I have another source that's closer to me, that's near and dear to me, that I can trust, or at least begin to trust, that will give me the answer, will give me answers that I've been looking for, that I've been searching for? Well, it's called inner wisdom, all right? And it's that inherent part of us. We're all born with it. It's a part of us now. For some people, because they didn't know it was there, and maybe have never accessed it, or never learned that you could trust that inner wisdom, that inner knowing, then it's very small, and it kind of hides in the folds of our being. And once in a while, it might tentatively peek its head out and say, well, I have an answer for you. And it whispers. But if we're not paying attention, we don't hear it. And or we hear it, but we ignore it. So let me give you an example. So the other day, I was going out the door, and I'm looking around my house, and there's this sense inside of me that I'm forgetting something. Have you ever had that happen, where you go, seems to me I was supposed to take something with me or do something before I left, and you puzzle for maybe a few seconds, and then, oh, well, I gotta go. And off you go out the door. And so I get down to the car, and then I'm rummaging around in my bag. I usually put my cell phone on my little holder in my vent in the car. And I'm going, where's my cell phone? And I go, well, it's 4 flights back up to my apartment. And I'm going, oh no, I left my cell phone in the house. Well, my inner knowing knew that I was leaving something behind that was probably going to be important to me. But I ignored it. I just, oh well, I can't think of what it is. And so, whereas maybe if I had just made another wander through my place, I would have spied it and go, oh yeah, there it is. Oh, my cell phone. Oh my goodness. So it would have saved me a trip back up 4 flights. Well, that's a very small example of what I'm talking about. But when you pay attention to that inner wisdom, and instead of saying, well, I don't know, and just letting it go, you say, well, I don't have a ready answer for that, but I'm kind of curious now what that answer might be. So here's another example. When I am, so it's Tuesday night or it's Thursday night, and I'm faced with needing a topic for Wednesday for Healing Call of Cancer or Friday for Tea with Sue. And there's times when I'm just drawing a blank and I'm going, well, I don't know what to talk about. So I just, instead of saying, well, I don't know, and mulling it over and fretting and worrying, I just throw it into my, what a friend calls the magic bucket. And I say, okay, universe, you know what I need to talk about tomorrow. So when I wake up in the morning, I expect that that information will be there. It has never failed me. The answer is always there. Oh, thanks for my topic. So this week's topic appeared earlier this week. I didn't have to wait till Thursday night. And all of a sudden, this idea just appeared in my mind, and I'm going, oh, so that's what I'm going to talk about on Friday. Okay, so then I ran for my little tablet to write some notes so that I didn't forget, because I could have. And there it was. So this inner knowing that we have, some people call it an intuitive hit. Some people call it a gut feeling. Some people get a physical sensation beyond a gut feeling in their bodies. Their bodies tingle and they know the rightness of it. Some people call them goosebumps or God bumps. You know, you listen to a particularly poignant piece of music or something that someone has read and you get all tingly. Well, that's the resonance of the truth of something that's flooding our inner being. And then it comes out physically, because as I've said before, our bodies are these amazing communication devices. So when something is heart-centered and hits us right there, then our body responds and say, oh, yes, that's it. So of course, the first part is recognizing that we do have this inner knowing inside us, this inner wisdom that comes from being part of God, being part of the universe. And it's just inherent in everyone. Then, of course, the next part, if you want to get the most benefit out of that inner wisdom, is to begin to, first of all, acknowledge that it's there. And secondly, learn to trust it. So if something bubbles up, you pay attention to it and say, you're about to make a decision that you've been researching and coming to terms with over a period of time. And you think you're going to go in this direction, but something doesn't feel quite right. And you have a choice at that point. do you just barrel ahead? Well, I did all the research, it must be okay. Or do you stop and say, I'm going to wait for a bit here because something doesn't feel quite right in all of this. I don't know what it is at the moment, but I need to wait until it's revealed. Maybe the timing's off. Maybe I'm not engaging with the right people. Maybe this is not the right strategy for me. Maybe there's something better that I hadn't thought of before. So it's to begin to trust. And then when that inner wisdom serves you up something that you were asking for, you honor it. Like, I am so grateful to have this inner wisdom there that I can access whenever I choose. And it has always delivered. When I track back, there are so many examples of this getting delivered. And of course, the opposite is also true. There are so many times when I ignored that inner guidance system and I'm going, oh, why did I do that? And I got consequences that I wasn't happy about. Well, life, right? We get both sides. So one of the ways of accessing inner wisdom is certainly meditation or being quiet or being still, and you pose the issue. So, for example, there are times when I've had pain in a certain part of my body. I wasn't sure what it was all about. I couldn't pinpoint anything I'd done physically that would have triggered that. I didn't know why it was happening. And so I sat with it. And I opened myself up to this pain and that part of my body that was hurting. And I said, okay, talk to me. Tell me what this is all about. And so then I would wait. And I would just allow whatever came up to come up. And if I was patient, eventually the answer was right there. And I'm going, oh, okay. Now I know what I can do. And then there'll be a series of choices of how you might work with that. And sometimes the pain would just flat out go away. As soon as I acknowledged it and listened to what it had to tell me and it had to say, it had no further reason to hide in my body or take up space in my body, and it would just gradually dissipate. I'm going, oh, yes, all right. So it's as simple as that. I mean, we're marvelously constructed to have these kinds of things happen. What's required is this synergy between mind, body, and soul. We really need to get in sync with who we are as magnificent beings and to look within more often. Well, rather than looking without. Yes, there are some answers out there, no question. Well, where did those answers come from? Well, sometimes, and maybe all the time, I don't have a thought about that at the moment, but sometimes that's somebody else's inner wisdom. And they just say the absolute right thing at the right moment, and it sticks in your head and you go, oh. So here's a crazy example. Many years ago, I was talking to a friend whose daughter was experiencing just a nasty bout of diarrhea. It was kind of extreme. And she was quite concerned. Well, she had been in a part of the country, she and her daughter had been visiting in a part of the country that is known for something in this part of the world as beaver fever. So if you drink water that hasn't gone through the treatment plant, like drink it from a stream, and there's this bacteria in the water, well, you can contract something known as beaver fever. Well, it's not that easy to diagnose unless you go and get a stool sample. Well, most of the time, people don't think to do that. But because this was ongoing, my friend insisted to the doctor, look, you need to do this test. So they do the test. Sure enough, this little girl, this was the problem. And so there was medication for it, and she recovered right away. So I just was kind of fascinated by this story because I'd never heard this before. So this information sticks in my brain. About 6 months later, one of my aunties was telling me about her sister who was going through this whole thing with diarrhea and how bad it was and so on. And I said, wait a minute. I said, didn't she go to visit her other sister in the interior of British Columbia? And she said, yes. And I said, she didn't drink the water from a stream, did she? And she says, well, I don't know. So she asks my aunt, and I told my aunt what I was thinking. I said, all right, this is what happened to the daughter of a friend of mine. So maybe my auntie needs to go to the doctor and say, check for this. And sure enough, that was exactly what had happened. She'd gone for a little hike and hadn't taken bottled water with her. It was cold mountain stream, and everybody thinks, oh, well, the water must be pure, right? Nope. And that was the thing. And I'm going, wow, just how did that happen? Like it was a serendipitous moment that I'm going, wow. And why did I think to even mention that, to bring that up at that point in time? But it was like a little bell went off in my head. Sue, you need to talk about this. And it helped my aunt. And these stories were months apart and people were miles apart, but here it was. So I've grown to become extremely fond of my inner wisdom. Not that I always listen to it, because I don't. And when I don't, then usually the consequences are not that pleasant. Sometimes I kind of get away with it, but sometimes I don't. It's important to look at your inner guidance. Don't let yourself off the hook when something is going on that needs to be explored and looked at and addressed, because you want to be all you can be. You want to be as magnificent as you are, or at least that's what I want for you. Well, if you don't want that, that's okay. But you can quit listening and that's fine. You're going to be magnificent anyway, whether you want to embrace it or not. You already are, so deal with it, right? So explore this. Even to a starting place would be to track back to all the times that you paid attention to that little voice. That little voice told you something. You said, that's not a bad idea. I think maybe I'll do that. And then it ended up wonderful. And you're going, ooh, or you're relieved because something that was not going to be pleasant didn't happen. And you go, oh, wow, that was lucky escape, right? So there are times like that, and talk with other people and say, well, have you ever had a sense of something wasn't quite right? What did you do about it? And I just ignore that. Well, then what happened? Oh, I was sorry I ignored that. And once you have enough evidence, that's when, if you didn't trust your inner wisdom before, that's when you can start trusting and saying, wow, there was this case and this case and this case and this case. And pretty soon it makes a pretty compelling reason to pay attention to your inner wisdom. Now, it'll take time if you're going to go within and allow that inner wisdom to speak, because there'll be lots of chatter from the ego that distracts you and wants you to just ignore whatever your inner wisdom is saying, because there's too much else going on. But be patient with it. And I think you'll find that, or do what I do. I have my little magic bucket at the end of the bed, and just before I go off to sleep, if there's something that I want to know or something that I want to have come into my life, I just throw it into the magic bucket and I say, okay, universe, look after it for me. And I just leave it there. And it's always a delightful surprise when it manifests. It just gives me a huge chuckle. And oh yeah, I asked for that. There it is. Okay. Oh, I wanted that answer. There it is. You're magnificent enough to do this. So play with that this week. Have some fun with your inner wisdom and pulling it forward as much as possible. Uh, I mean, it'll even help you find a parking space in a crowded lot. So just go for it. Absolutely. In the meantime, have a glorious week. If you're enjoying Tea with Sue, and maybe you've tapped into Healing Call of Cancer, which is also on my YouTube channel, you're welcome to subscribe to my channel to get even more. And I've been downloading all of my YouTube videos to my app, The Magnificence Mentor, which of course is a free download, no matter what kind of phone you have or tablet or whatever. And it's all the content to uplift, inspire, cause you to think is all there. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next week.